Okay, and we have Bradley, who is calling in from Atlanta on our Republican line. What do you think, Bradley?
This is the first time I've ever called in. I got through, so I'm pretty excited. I'm absolutely concerned about our electoral systems. I hear my fellow Republicans like buying into this Trump stuff that there's no collusion, there's nothing going on. If that's true, A, he should release his taxes. B, then why won't he sit down and talk to Robert Mueller? And I voted for Trump, and I'm actually here to say that I apologize. I made a horrible mistake. This guy is an absolute buffoon, and that's just what I wanted to say.
All right, the Washington Examiner reports that the Department of Homeland Security has no plans to look at voter fraud after the issue was sent to them. It says the Homeland Security Department's Election Security Unit currently has no plans to review voter fraud. President Trump announced this week that he was dissolving his voter fraud commission and said the effort would shift to the DHS. But the department said it had no immediate plans to investigate voter fraud. According to a Reuters report, multiple officials said they were not aware of plans to investigate the matter within the department. And Nitro is calling in from Rockaway Park, New York on our independent line. Are you concerned about election security systems?
Yes, I'm very concerned, especially because the internet has gotten, we've gone very far, too fast. We've gone very far with very little security. But more importantly than that, we have no uniform voting laws. From state to state, it varies. In Florida, 900,000 ex-felons were not allowed to vote in a presidential election. 10 states. If you served your time, you paid your price, you're not allowed to vote. Yet in the other 40 states, that has no bearing. Also, the different methods of counting votes, but the biggest risk to our voting system is money in politics. The fact that billionaires can contribute vast sums of money to get their puppets into power, but a few billionaires can do this. And for $1.5 billion in campaign contributions, you now have a $1.5 trillion deficit because of the people who were elected, who were put in place by these billionaires. I don't know who the billionaires, we know who they are. But regardless, when every man and every woman has the right to vote, that's fine. The Electoral College are 535 political appointees, and 2 out of the last 3 presidential elections, which, by the way, is the only office in this country that is not directly elected by the people. The last 2 presidential elections, the popular vote of the people was frustrated by the Electoral College, by political appointees. Research this. Research the history of the Electoral College, why it was put into place when only landowners had the right to vote. Anyhow, basically, you need to have a uniform voting system throughout the United States, just like they do in our neighbor Canada.
All right. And Ginny is calling in from Lancaster, Ohio on our Republican line. Are you concerned about the integrity of voting systems ahead of the midterms, Ginny?
No, I'm really not. And they keep talking about this Russia meddling and the Russians did this and the Russians did that. But when they're reporting all this stuff, they never really do say anything what the Russians did. So, no, I'm not worried about it. It's silly. We're not that stupid of a country that we can't defend our voting system.
So, but Ginny, there have been, not just in the United States, other countries too have reported efforts by Russians to interfere with elections in places like France and the UK. Don't you think that Russians have an interest in trying to mess with Western countries, particularly on something so important as voting?
Well, they might. I don't know. I read a book on Russia last year. This time last year, I started reading a book on every country. There's 196 countries, so it's going to take forever to read about every country. And Russia is a stinking country. I don't know who in their right mind would want to live there. They're an evil country. They make us look like cream puffs.
All right. We're asking you today, are you concerned about security in the upcoming midterm elections in November? Cliff's calling from Brentwood, California on our Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning.
And are you concerned about the security of the elections in November?
I'm not as concerned as you are. I see this as pretty much a hoax. What really is going on is that the FBI paid this guy, Chris Steele, to go to Russia to get a bunch of misinformation. Everybody, the FBI knew was misinformation, took that to FISA court to try and get a wiretap so they could, surveil, spy on Americans. And then they unmasked those people and their names, in their friendly outlets like the Washington Post, which, so the only real contact with Russia that's going on here is, the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. Everybody knows about the uranium, but the reset button, and for instance, his SALT talks and all these other efforts of Obama to reach out to Putin were embarrassing.
Well, Cliff, let me ask you this: there have been election officials, states secretaries general. Have said that there were at least an attempt to gain access to things like voter rolls by hackers in the last election, although none was successful. There were attempts in 21 states. Do you have any concerns at all about the integrity of the elections with such a big election coming up in November?
Yes, thank you. Fair enough. Of course, there are going to be those efforts, but they're minuscule. Yeah, and like you said, they didn't succeed. And this what minuscule, I think, more accurately, it describes Russia's placement of Facebook ads. Those were minuscule, and they were really on behalf of, almost Black Lives Matter. They were just trying to foment upset in our social political status.
Okay.